What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing us another fantasy football video. This one will be previewing the Week 7 Thursday Night Football matchup between the Jaguars and the New Orleans Saints. I'll be going over position by position and sort of going over what to expect from each of these players and whether or not they should be in your fantasy football lineups this week. So, as always, if you guys have any specific start-sit questions, especially pertaining to the Thursday Night Football game, please do just let me know in the comments. I'm happy to help you guys get those lineups set and hopefully help you guys get some wins in Week 7 because it's a big week. A lot of us are really fighting to start stacking some wins. We've got to find our way to squeak into the playoffs, and a lot of us are sort of maybe positioning ourselves for those buys. So, big week here. Obviously, it's a huge week with buys. We've got 6 teams on buy this week, a lot of injuries, so lineups are going to be pretty tough to set, so we'll take that into account when we're setting our lineups as well. So, friendly reminder that I put out every single week as well. If you do have a player that you're playing on Thursday night, make sure that you put them in the running back or wide receiver slot. Don't start them in your flex position because you want to give yourself that added flexibility. Should you have a player to get declared out later on in the week, you don't want to limit yourself from a positional standpoint. So make sure you don't use your flex spots on Thursday Night Football. It's really going to put you in a bind later on in the week and could really be a real issue for you down the road. So yeah, with that, let's just get to the quarterbacks here. It should be a fun game. Starting things off with the quarterbacks, I'll start off with Trevor Lawrence. He is banged up with a knee injury. It sounds like he's still going to suit up on Thursday. He's officially listed as questionable. I'm recording this on Wednesday, so we'll see what happens when they get towards the game, but I fully expect him to play. He has yet to miss a game in his NFL career so far, and I doubt he'll sit out of this one. I would expect some limited mobility for him. That is going to limit his fantasy upside. Probably won't have very many scrambles, and they're probably not going to design any runs for him near the goal line, which they do sometimes. So he's probably still like a low-end quarterback one option just because there are so many quarterbacks on bye. We've got 6 teams on bye, injuries to guys like Justin Fields. So I don't love starting him. It is a tough matchup against the Saints, who give up the 6th least points to opposing fantasy quarterbacks. I'm not excited about it by any means, but he's a decent option, probably like 13th, 14th for me, so you can start him. Not someone that I'm super excited about, but if you want to play him and you don't really have any other options, I do think you can. There are a lot of streaming options that I'd prefer, though. Brock Purdy I'd prefer to play on Monday night. Matthew Stafford's got a better matchup. I prefer to play him. Geno Smith, I'd play him over Trevor Lawrence. If any of those guys are on waivers, I'd look there. Kirk Cousins, if he's available, I'd play him over Lawrence even in a tough matchup. So I'd look elsewhere, but if you really can't do anything better, then I would lean towards Lawrence. On the other side of the ball, we've got Derek Carr. He's a decent streaming option for me this week. He did look really healthy last week. He threw the ball 50-plus times. That's really good to see. Seeing him air it out means his shoulder's probably back to 100%. And the Jaguars ranked 23rd against opposing fantasy quarterbacks so far, so this is an opportunity for Derek Carr to put up some big numbers. I actually prefer Derek Carr to Trevor Lawrence this weekend, but I wouldn't drop Trevor Lawrence to pick up Derek Carr. So just sort of play that by ear. If you have other options on your bench that you can drop to pick up a new quarterback, one of those streaming options I mentioned earlier, you can do that over to Trevor Lawrence, but I wouldn't be excited about it, and I'm definitely not targeting Derek Carr either. You don't need to play him unless you're in a 2-quarterback league. So probably benching both of these quarterbacks if I can, but if you need to, they're both like decent low-end streaming options. Next, we've got the running back position. I'll start things off with Travis Etienne of the Jaguars here. He's just got to be in lineups for you guys. I believe he's the running back 3 so far on the season. And even though the Saints are an extremely difficult matchup for opposing running backs, they give up the 2nd fewest points to opposing running backs so far this season. Etienne is still a low-end running back 1 for me this week. He's just too involved in the offense. He's seen 20-plus touches a week. He's looked pretty good on them, although he's been a little bit inefficient on the ground aside from a couple big plays. But that's just kind of how Etienne operates. He's a home run hitter, so you're probably banking on either one big play for him or just him catching 4 or 5 passes. He should be able to do that. He'll be a focal point of this offense, maybe with Trevor Lawrence being less mobile. Maybe he has to dump it down to Etienne more this week, and you see an increased usage for him in PPR formats. So Etienne's got to be in lineups. It's not really a question there. It's just how good is he going to be this week. Outside of that, Alvin Kamara on the other side of the ball, he's obviously got to be in lineups as well. It's an okay matchup for Alvin Kamara. The Jaguars give up the 11th fewest points to opposing running backs, so not good, not great, but not bad either for Alvin Kamara in terms of the matchup. He's obviously going to be a must-start as well, though. He's averaging like 25 touches in 3 weeks since he's come back. The volume's just been insane. He's only got 1 touchdown in the season. I do expect that to bounce back as well. We know Alvin Kamara historically is a high-end touchdown producer. He's running back 8 in fantasy points per game since returning, so you got to be playing Alvin Kamara. I actually prefer Alvin Kamara to Travis Etienne this week, but they both need to be started. They're both lineup locks, and they both just need to be in lineups. And you should be happy that you'll probably get like high-end running back 2, low-end running back 1 numbers from both of them this week. And on top of that, I'd probably sit every other running back. I'm not going to mess around with Kendre Miller, not going to mess around with Take Bigsby yet, but they should probably be on rosters, especially in deeper leagues. Next, we've got the wide receiver position. We got a lot of names to talk about here, so I'll start things off with Calvin Ridley. He's a wide receiver 2 option for me. It's not a special matchup for him. Obviously, the Saints have been a really good defense just overall so far, so it's not something that I'm super excited about, but I think you obviously have to play Calvin Ridley. I can't really imagine benching him, especially on a week with so many players on buys, but it really does hinge on one big play. He hasn't been like a focal point of the offense really outside of like week 1 and maybe a little bit in week 5, so he hasn't been a super reliable fantasy option. It's a really frustrating player to roster right now, and he's going to have those blow-up weeks, so I think you just got to keep playing him, and hopefully you catch as many of those blow-up weeks as possible. But just understand there's a pretty wide range of outcomes for him. The Saints cornerbacks are pretty quality. I wouldn't be super excited about it, but Ridley's a good enough player and a good enough offense that you got to start him. Christian Kirk, another wide receiver 2 that you probably just have to start, especially in PPR formats. He's going to catch 5 or more passes. He continues to be featured in the offense, especially against zone defense. They utilize him really well. He's just a really good player. You got to keep playing him. He's been the focal point of the offense. And with Zay Jones inactive, probably, it sounds like he's probably going to sit on Thursday. That makes Christian Kirk an even more solid option. Speaking of Zay Jones, he probably sits in this one, but if he ends up suiting up, I'm still probably benching him. I know he scored touchdowns in each of the 2 games he's been healthy in, but I just don't want to ride that wave. I want to see him come back and be healthy before I trust him in my lineup, so I'd bench Zay Jones if I can. Chris Olave on the other side of the ball, I think this is finally going to be the week that Chris Olave puts it all together. The Jaguars ranked 22nd against opposing fantasy wide receivers. Derek Carr looks healthy. I really do think this is going to be Chris Olave's first blow-up game. I'm ready for 100-plus yards and a touchdown this week, so you got to get Chris Olave in your lineups. I think he's a wide receiver 1 this week. Michael Thomas, he's a wide receiver 3 option in PPR. You just know what you're getting with Michael Thomas. You're getting about 4 or 5 catches, about 50 to 60 receiving yards, and you'll just take your 10 fantasy points and hope he falls in the end zone. So Michael Thomas, you can play him. He's not someone that I'm super excited about, but with so many players on bye, you could do a lot worse. And then Rashid Shaheed, he's a low-end flex play, a guy that you can play if you need to. He's especially better in non-PPR formats because of how explosive he is. He's not going to see a ton of volume, but he had 2 really great catches last week. I think he's a really talented player. I do think the Saints should utilize him quite a bit more, but they're not really utilizing him at that high level yet. But he's such an explosive player that he can be in lineups like a low-end flex option if you want to play him. At the tight end position, we've got 2 options here that I think are pretty decent. Starting off with the Jaguars, Evan Ingram, he's a mid-tier tight end 1 for me. He's been super consistent so far this season. Obviously, he hasn't had any really like blow-up games like we saw last season. That's sort of how he found his way into being a tight end 1 in the season, is like a bunch of mediocre performances and then a couple really insane spike weeks. We haven't seen any of those out of him just yet this year, and I don't know if that's going to happen this week either. I think you got to play him though. He's just been too consistent. The tight end position is so brutal that you got to keep playing Evan Ingram. He's 4th in the NFL so far in the season at receiving yardage among tight ends. Just don't expect a huge game against him. The Saints matchup is extremely tough against opposing tight ends. They're really good at defending them. They've got a really elite linebacker core, so I wouldn't expect a whole lot of production out of Evan Ingram, but he'll probably catch 4 to 5 passes, end up with 40 to 50 receiving yards, and then you're just hoping he scores a touchdown. So you got to play Evan Ingram pretty much if you have him. On the other side of the ball, Taysom Hill. He was extremely involved last week, and I do think you can start him as like a tight end streaming option if you want to, assuming Juwan Johnson remains out in this game. It makes Taysom Hill basically their effectively tight end 1 in the offense. He's a good enough player. They utilize him as a quarterback on occasion, as a running back. He's got a good shot to score in a given week near the goal line. So you're obviously banking on a touchdown with Taysom Hill, but we saw him catch 7 passes last week. I doubt they'll ever top that again in his career, but probably catch 2 or 3 passes this week, probably throw 2 or 3 passes as well, and probably get 3 to 4 carries. So you're banking on a touchdown, but if you want to play Taysom Hill, you can definitely play him. Just pray he falls in the end zone. So that'll do it for this week's Thursday Night Football Primer. It should be a really exciting game. I'm not expecting a whole lot of points just with Trevor Lawrence being banged up and the Saints having such a good defense. So it could be a bit of a lower scoring game. I believe the Saints have hit the under in all 6 of their games so far this season. So should be a bit of a underwhelming offensive performance overall, but I think there's a lot of fantasy relevant players, and it should be a pretty fun, competitive game as well. So hopefully it's a fun game for us all to watch. Up next on Saturday morning, you guys will get the start sit video where I'll go over every single matchup this weekend, go over which players should be in starting lineups and which players should be sat in your fantasy lineups. So if you want to make sure you get access to that video, just make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We've got 890-ish subscribers right now. We'd love to hit 1,000 by the NFL season, so it's about 10 more per week. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do just subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell so you get notifications when videos come out, and that way you'll be make sure you get a notification as well when I go live every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time, 1 hour before the 10 a.m. games kick off, and really help you guys get your lineup set, go through those last minute injury updates, and make sure you guys are as up to date as possible. So I'll be here all season long helping you guys win your league. So if you haven't already, like I said, please do subscribe to the channel. If you have any specific questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. I love interacting with you guys there. And if you haven't already, please do just give the video a thumbs up. It really helps the algorithm, helps me know that I'm doing a good job. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't.
you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.